Hi there. Welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, today let's talk about a healthy organizational culture. We can talk a lot about the makeup of what makes up a healthy organizational culture, great communication, you know, constructive feedback, uh, solid processes and procedures, and right on down the line through every aspect of the organization very diligent, um, attentiveness to customer expectations and requirements, and then delivering on all of those things on time, right? Whether it be a product or a service. Some organizations, though, don't have, say, a hard delivery date where others do. And so you do have a bit of a mix that makes being able to track the key performance indicators a little more challenging. But as we get into the layers, as we often do, of a healthy organizational culture, let's look about into the attitude of the organizational culture. I saw a statistic that said that negative word of mouth travels 2 to 3 times faster than positive word of mouth. So it makes you wonder, right? Why? Obviously, there's dramatic effect and validation, and obviously, look over there, don't look here, kind of a thing going on potentially. But if you've got negative word of mouth emanating and rippling out in the community, it's said that one negative, feedback or word of mouth in a community uh, within 2 weeks touches about 50,000 people. That's huge. But positive or affirming stories, word of mouth, travel, a third to half that, uh, speed and breadth. So this is another reason we have to be careful about organizational culture. And that isn't to say we walk on eggshells and tiptoe around. We don't. But we do have to be aware that there are going to be times when you improve your organizational culture, and it's not a matter of perfection. It's not I've, gotten my organizational culture, in a fantastic area and everything's going great. No, as we've talked before, things are variable, right? There are waves. The weather moves in waves, light moves in everything is on a wave, right? And the same thing, this is why more like a garden, it's the daily attentiveness to organizational culture. It is the behaviors, the attitudes, what we say, what we, do, even how we think that affects our organizational culture. And it affects our customers. And all of that emanates outward. And so it doesn't take much if you're not, developing your team, you're not engaging with your team or I say developing them, but not engaging on a daily, doing daily management walks or meetings, depending on your situation, obviously, if you're separated by distance. But if you're not engaging on a very usual basis with your team to ensure that your engagement is high, you get feedback, communication is tight, your problem solving efforts are immediate, all of these things. If you're not doing these things on a daily basis in a very disciplined way, then your organizational culture, you're 1 degree off, and over a course of 500 miles, you're going to be, or 1,000 miles or so, you're going to be significantly missing your target, right? So this is why it's, the attitude of a garden actually comes to mind, because when you're taking care of that garden, guess what? It's a day in and day out. You're keeping out the ravaging rabbits. They're going to chew up your garden. You got to give the nutrients, the water, all the good stuff, right? To keep that garden growing. Pull the weeds, do what you have to do. And continue to plant and all these things. And seasonally, you have ebbs and flows, obviously, in the planting season, planting and harvesting and all these things. And this is part of the reason, back in ancient times and not even so far back, because now we're about Thanksgiving is right upon us. That is what? A celebration of harvest as well, right? So there's an element of, I guess you could say bleed over during our holiday times to really celebrate our harvest, right, for the year, and some of it intangible and some of it very tangible. So very important elements to culture. But for us to continue to develop good organizational cultures, we have to be very cognizant, be very, very tuned in and very aware that, negative turns down down the path of communication. It doesn't take a snarky comment, bad behavior, bad attitude, inattentiveness. It doesn't take much. And it doesn't even mean that you have former team members leave. It could be team members who are currently working on your team, for example, who are just dissatisfied. Next thing you know, they say a thing, and the thing emanates outward from there. And it could be that you lose customers, and you may not have a clue why you're losing customers. You may be thinking to yourself, "What's going on? I don't know what's happening here." But what could also be happening is that under the waterline of things that go on in your operation, that maybe you have some negative feedback. This is another reason why we have this open communication and we have this, daily engagement. We want to know when things aren't working well, you know, when things aren't cohesive with our team. We want to know these things so that we can coach our team, we can work with, we can improve, we can overcome these obstacles and constraints as they occur or very quickly thereafter. Because if you don't, things will get out of control. Now, you might think, well, that's just PR and all that. No, it isn't really. Because why is that? Because all your customers are affected by the few customers that come and go all the time. And guess what? So your team is also a customer, and then they have customers, their families, their friends, the community at large. So your customers is, if you were to look, your customer is a never ending pool, if you think about it in reality. It emanates outward and is touching areas that you don't even realize. So this is why it's super important to have a healthy organizational culture. Not always easy, especially if you've been struggling and stammering along anyway, and you've got maybe functional things to overcome. You might be thinking, well, it's just tone and tenor, and people should come here with a good attitude, and they should be thankful for what they have, and throw it in that bucket. Well, there's no doubt that that should be the general operation of everybody. We should kind of generally be just, trying to do our best. But guess what? It doesn't work like that. If you're a leader of a team, you've got to lead your team. You got to coach your team. You got to mentor. You got to direct traffic. You have to, steer that ship or get it steered. And part of that steerage is you attending to those needs so that folks can do what they need to do in the best possible way that they can do it. And if their attitude is drifting off because you're not engaging, right? Now this, you can flip the coin on healthy organizational culture and look at it from the other perspective. If you're a team member, you can't be lagging behind. You can't be, just given, just kind of just showing up and going home and clocking in and clocking out and not really contributing to the effort, right? Remember, your customers in your life are served when your primary work customers are being served, right? So this is why organizational culture is not just a leadership or just a team member issue. It is the entire team issue. It is a cultural issue even outside your organization. Look at cities, counties, states. So too, if they aren't good stewards of resources, if they aren't managing their communication in a positive way to address, concerns that people have and these sorts of things, then guess what? That message is going to get out there that, well, they just don't care, or they're not, efficient, or they don't, they're just not good, and they, whatever, they're just, they've checked out and they don't really get it. So that message could fly, and you figure 2 weeks, 50,000 people, it wouldn't take much, a month, and a whole, a good portion of a state could be consumed by, negative culture. Forget just organizations as it relates to a business. Take that to a school district. Take that to a city. Take that to a county, a state. Take that to, see what I'm saying, where I'm going with this? This continues to emanate outward. So that negative, word of mouth, traveling 2 to 3 times faster than any positive thing you do, This is why it's so difficult, and it's just the challenge we face as human beings. We have to make sure we are talking about our wins. We are talking about the good things that we're doing and attempting to do, right? Because some of it's a work in progress, right? So we're working on projects. We have different things that we're working on and we're attached to and associated with that we're trying to do good in the community and all these things. This is why this has to continue on. You can never sit back and just say, well, it's just business as usual. No, business as usual won't work. And the reason why is you will be consumed because it won't take much. Because, first of all, if you're not pressed by the need or desire to serve your customers, then that's also going to come back in the way of negative word of mouth. And keep in mind, this could just be customer oriented. This doesn't have to be anybody on your team. This could be people associated with your team, potentially friends, family, that sort of thing. But it could be just your customers in the community, or further out than that, if you're a broader based organization that touches, beyond the state, beyond the country, beyond and further, right, around the globe. If you're international, this emanates outward, and if you're not attentive, then these messages and the negative word of mouth is going to get out there. Now, the other part of this equation, I guess you could say the third rail of this, is when you fail, you have to own it. And the reason why is when you don't own it, then that word of mouth goes out, and now it could be, like the telephone game, the story gets a little bigger, a little wilder, a little wackier, right? This is why public relations exist, so that they can get the concise message out there. Now, I don't want to throw public relations under the bus, but, obviously, they're going to tell you what they want you to know. But that's why we have follow up, and this is why we have auditing, and this is why we have investigation. This is why these things exist, right? So to validate, right? But in the validation process, guess what? We can't assume the worst all the time. We have to follow a pattern, a process, and everything. Just like when you make a product, just like when you provide a service, any of that stuff, you follow the process. Okay? So creating a healthy organizational culture, it might seem, the way I've packaged some of these rails of potentiality here, as kind of a risky or kind of an ominous thing. It's really not. You really just need to put your best foot forward. You just always need to be trying to do the best you can, communicate and be clear, be transparent, and move forward with, great intent toward your customers, and then all your customers will be served. You will not reach perfection. So just wipe that out of your brain. There will always be something out there, someone spreading rumors, all these kinds of things, negative word of mouth, we'll call those, right? There is always going to be that. The thing we have to keep in mind as a culture, though, is to go check ourselves, right, and go, that seems pretty intense. Maybe I'll just not pass that along because I don't want to be spreading rumors and all these kinds of things, negatively when I don't know any better. So usually it's kind of like that thing. It's like, well, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Well, if it sounds too bad to be true, it probably also is, right? So keep that in mind. But in the line of us creating great organizational cultures in our, for the organization, when we do that as a team or as a multitude of organizations, and it doesn't matter if it's municipal or otherwise, all organizations, when we're doing that in concert, this is how we can transform culture. And this is another way that we protect love. And we're hitting that good domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and encourage people. And when we do that, that can also help to communicate some of the good and great things that we do in the community and in the culture at large to transform it. And when we do that, we're transforming everyone's lives. And that's great. That's really an amazing thing. So I just wanted to touch base with you a little bit today on healthy organizational culture. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, talk to you later.